Hello all, welcome back to TLC Uncovered, where the curtain finally falls, and the tale's television edits for time come into full focus. Imagine this for a moment. The fluorescent courtroom lights are flashing against highly polished wood, and anticipation hangs thick in the air. At its center, seated side by side, are Kody and Robyn Brown, hands clasped a tad too firmly, eyes on the judge's bench. After months of rumblings, gossip, and court filings, the Brown vs. Brown civil trial is finally underway. No one in that courtroom anticipated the figure that would hold sway over the whole case, $2 million. For years, everyone has been wondering where the Browns' collectively shared business account, Family Traditions LLC, had gone. It was the money that all the wives were instructed to have faith in, the pool that underwrote houses, vacations, and production expenses. Christine scraped together what she needed to relocate to Utah. Janelle waited for money to construct her dream house on Coyote Pass. And Meri? She stayed silent, loyal, and hopeful, even as Kody kept repeating that familiar line, "The family account is running dry." But in this courtroom, under oath, that story started to crumble. The plaintiff's lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Anna Sharama, stood up from her chair and pushed a folder across the table. The tab on the cover said Exhibit C, Transaction Record, KN&R Holdings. The judge opened it. Cameras snapped. And there, in black and white, was a number that could not be overlooked, $2,006,417.38. Before we proceed, take a moment to do one thing. If you've ever watched Sister Wives and felt like something about the family's tale just didn't add up, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because this isn't staged drama. This is what happens when reality TV collides with reality itself. Now, back in the courtroom. The defense attempted to remain composed. Kody Brown sat rigidly, jaw set, face impassive. Robyn had her tissue at the ready, eyes already red before even one question had been asked. On the other side of the aisle, the plaintiffs sat in silence, two women who had waited decades for this day, observing as their lawyer started to tear down the myth piece by piece. Sharama began cautiously, casting transaction records onto the courtroom screen. Each line pulsed with light as she spoke. Family Traditions LLC to KN&R Holdings. KN&R Holdings to a private trust. Week after week, repeated transfers with cryptic notes such as production expense or household reimbursement. But when the bank investigator took the stand, the reality was evident. These were not business expenses whatsoever. They were investments into a private investment fund, a portfolio listed all in Robyn Brown's name. A murmur of incredulity swept through the courtroom gallery. Even the judge sat forward. Sharama's voice lanced the hush. $2 million in cumulative profits, transferred out of a shared family account into an entity controlled by these defendants. In plain view. Robyn's attorney leapt to his feet, objecting, but the judge overruled him. The damage was done. Robyn leaned in closer to Kody, speaking something barely above a whisper to the microphones. They were supposed to trust us. The courtroom went silent. That one statement, half whisper, half admission, hung in the air like smoke. And with it, one thing became certain. The first casualty of the Brown family empire wasn't money. It was trust. The courtroom was full to standing room the next morning. Coffee, paper, and perfume combined in one cloud of discomfort. Everyone waited. Day 2 was when the evidence would tell it louder than the folks that tried to conceal it. Attorney Anna Sharama stood, her heels softly clicking as she walked towards the screen. In the background, the projector roared into action. One by one, color-coded transfers materialized on the monitor, arrows streaming from Family Traditions LLC to KN&R Holdings and then to a new account titled Flagstaff Development Fund LLC. The digits rolled like a slot machine, and each stop revealed another chunk of the same $2 million trail. Sharama's voice was calm. "This is a map," she told him. A map of misdirection. The first to testify was a financial auditor, Daniel Graves. He had been brought in to examine the joint books of the family by one of the wives after she spotted the missing entries on a quarterly report. Graves outlined how the same amounts went missing from Family Traditions during the same week that TLC's production payments went through. The money was transferred in 3 steps, first to KN&R Holdings, then to Flagstaff Development, and then to a personal account under Robyn's name. When Sharama asked how that translated into plain English, Graves wasn't evasive. It means money intended for all was being spent on behalf of two. The defense attempted to rattle him. Couldn't these be business expenses, they asked. Graves smiled graciously. If so, he said, then someone's definition of business includes spa remodels and tuition payments. A low murmur ran through the room. The judge rapped the gavel once. Order restored, but just barely. And then came the surprise that no one anticipated, an insider witness. A former domestic worker, face half hidden behind long hair, approached the stand. She had worked inside the Flagstaff mansion for years. Her hands shook a little as she was sworn to tell the truth. Sharama spoke in a steady tone. While working in the Brown home, did you ever see mail or documents pertaining to KN and our holdings? The witness nodded. Yes. Constantly. They arrived in thick envelopes with private e-financial written on them. Occasionally they were placed on the counter beside Robyn's desk. I recall one because the number 2 million was ringed in red pen. You could hear the rustle of reporters writing down that line. What was the mood inside the house like? Sharama asked. The witness hesitated. Tense. Nobody walked on solid ground. When anyone even mentioned money, Robyn would say, it's being handled. And Kody, he'd nod, like the topic was off limits. Did you ever catch them talking about these accounts? Yes, she spoke in a barely audible voice. They referred to it as the security fund. Robyn once said, this is for when the others finally leave. We'll be the last ones left. That line struck like lightning. Even the defense lawyer bristled for an instant before standing to object. Speculative, he cried. The judge furrowed his brow, then nodded. Sustained. Jury will disregard. But the words were already spoken, etched across every notebook in the room. During cross-examination, the defense attempted to characterize the witness as being disgruntled. You don't work for the Browns anymore, right? No, she replied quietly. And isn't it true you quit following an argument with Mrs. Brown? The witness stared at him. I quit when I found out that honesty wasn't in my job description. A gasp. Then quiet. Sharama came forward for the last time. Before you leave, she said quietly, say to the court, in your own words, what you think this case is really about. The witness paused. It's about trust being used like money. And once it was used up, there was nothing left to give. The court remained quiet for a few seconds. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to stop. Kody sat rigid, staring at the tabletop. Robyn's cheeks shone with tears, but her jaw remained clenched, unbroken. Outside the courthouse, the crowd waited. Journalists held microphones. Fans held phones aloft. Hashtags were already trending. Hashtag 2 million secret. Hashtag family pot gone cold. But inside, everyone knew they'd only been hearing the first half. Because tomorrow, the defense would attempt to spin a new yarn, a yarn of misunderstanding, of victimhood, of a family too famous for its own good. And as cameras rolled out for the day, one phrase from the witness still rang in the courtroom, trust used like money. What no one knew yet was that the next witness would make that metaphor into cold, unarguable reality. The last day of the trial weighed more. You could sense it as soon as the doors opened. All the seats were taken, all the camera lights shining like flashlights awaiting history to unfold. Kody and Robyn entered first, their faces deflated, their bodies practiced but brittle. On the opposite side of the aisle sat the two plaintiffs, calm, intent, no longer furious, only prepared. The defense began its closing argument with a familiar story. Their attorney paced slowly, gesturing toward the Browns. This family, he said, has lived their lives under scrutiny. Every decision they make becomes a headline. What you're seeing here is not deception, it's exhaustion. He tried to frame the missing millions as accounting confusion, the product of years of chaotic filming schedules and shared responsibilities. But no one seemed convinced. When Anna Sharama rose for her rebuttal, the mood changed. She didn't shout, she didn't have to. She just clicked the projector remote, and the last slide came up, a single bank summary. One deposit, she indicated, her finger on the figure, of $2,006,000. Not spent. Not taxed. Not divided. She paused, allowing the silence to spread. This isn't about who loved whom. It's about who spoke the truth. Then she faced the jury. They lied to their family the account was depleted. They lied to their audience they were struggling. But the numbers don't lie. They merely hide, until someone chooses to open them up. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Robyn swiped at a tear, but her eyes remained glued to the screen. Sharama took a final step forward. The plaintiffs aren't seeking revenge. They're seeking acknowledgement that their work, their wages, their trust, were genuine. And that the individuals who took them away finally have to be held accountable. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Even the judge appeared to breathe slowly, as if realizing that something had been irretrievable just occurred. The jury spent less than 3 hours deliberating. 3 hours to determine a decade of secrets. When they filed back in, you could have heard a pin drop. The forewoman, a woman in her 50s, stood and passed the paper to the bailiff. The judge read quietly, his face unreadable. Then he uttered the words that would ring out in every headline by evening. On the count of misappropriation of funds, we find for the plaintiffs. On the breach of fiduciary duty count, we rule in favor of the plaintiffs. On the intentional infliction of emotional distress count, we rule in favor of the plaintiffs. Each word struck like a drumbeat. $2 million to be repaid. Additional damages for emotional distress. Court costs entirely allocated to the defendants. The flashes from the camera burst out. Robyn cried out, grabbing Kody's arm. He mumbled something nobody could hear, his words engulfed by the cacophony of shouting reporters outside. The judge rapped his gavel once. The hearing was adjourned. Christine and Janelle didn't whoop it up, they just hugged silently, tears streaming down their faces, not with victory, but relief. After years of being belittled as unloyal or jealous, they at last had validation that what they'd sensed was true. As Kody and Robyn exited out the side door, courthouse doors swung open to a barrage of microphones. Was it worth it? Someone bellowed. Are you going to appeal? Another asked. They replied nothing. They merely continued walking. By dusk, the headlines screamed across the nation, the $2 million secret revealed. The Brown fortune torn apart. Trust fund goes to trial. But beneath the din, the true story was hushed. The empire that once was a beacon of trust and solidarity had toppled under the burden of secrecy. What wealth constructed, truth destroyed. And perhaps, that's reality television's true price. When the performance is over, the actors remain, left to tally what's lost. Back in the vacant courtroom, the clerk collected files, one page loose. There was a handwritten message on the bottom of an exhibit copy that read, for family use only. Perhaps that was so at one time. No longer. This has been TLC Uncovered, where we go beyond, pose questions others are afraid to ask, and shed light on the stories behind the stories. If this investigation opened your eyes, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because next week, we're uncovering what really happened to the Browns' media contracts after the verdict. Until then, remember, every secret leaves a paper trail? And we'll be here to follow it.